Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all having a wonderful weekend. It is Sunday here. It's been raining all weekend, but we've had a couple of glimpses of sunlight today, so maybe it'll clear up for us. So today I am reviewing a fragrance that, again, I have been procrastinating over because I really want to do it justice, and I know that there's lots of people out there that really love this fragrance. So, I just wanted to make sure that I do a good review and a balanced review. And I'm going to say right off the bat that I also really love this fragrance, which is unfortunate because the likelihood of me ever getting my hands on it is very slim. But that's okay. I don't have to have every fragrance that I love. So what I have here is I think 2007 version of the Dior Homme EDT, which I think these are classified as unicorns these days. This is not my bottle, by the way. And it is so it's the classic sort of silver stem bottle. I think it often gets referred to as the silver stem. And it also has the Dior stamped on the base of the stem. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. So I think this is in fact, so there was another version, I think that there was a silver stem version that came out, I think in 2011. And so this one is definitely the earlier one because I think the later one didn't have the Dior stamped on the actual stem. Right, so now here comes the hard part. So I have sprayed this on my hand earlier today and I've been wearing it this week. It's a shame I didn't have a warmer day actually to wear this on, to just give it a bit of a test in warmer weather, because it has been quite cold and rainy all week this week for us. But what I get when I first spray this on is a very strong, pungent, citrus herbal opening. And I think that for me, the most prominent notes are bergamot and lavender, but there is a sage note that's listed for this fragrance in the opening, and I think that is what helps to give it that herbal feel, and it sort of gives it a drier feel as well in the opening. The opening on this is so punchy, it's almost eye-watering. It's awesome. But that opening only really lasts for a few moments, and then you start to get that beautiful, rich, buttery iris starting to pull through, and that softens the overall feel of the fragrance. And it brings in this beautiful creaminess to the fragrance, although that lavender and citrus are still very prominent and still very noticeable at this point in the development. There is also a peppery undertone in the mid dry down of this fragrance, which I think provides a bit of a rough edge to the fragrance, which otherwise might have become very smooth and creamy due to that iris note. But this, whatever this is that's doing this, and I think it might be cardamom, because cardamom for me, if I smell fresh cardamom pods, I find that they can be a little bit peppery and a very bright green kind of smell, and almost minty. So they really have a very fresh smell to them, and that's kind of what I'm getting with this. And it sort of stops the fragrance from becoming, if I want to impart gender, it stops it from becoming too feminine with that iris note and gives it almost a prickly feel. So it feels prickly to my nose. And as it dries down further, you also get a leather note coming through, which is very different to the leather note in this one, which is the Parfum, which I think arguably seems to get more airtime and is more popular than the EDT, although the EDT is hard to get now. But I am not a huge fan of the leather note in this. I think it's just too much. It's too strong. It overpowers that iris too much. And it almost feels like a dark skanky leather. It's not quite skanky, but it's almost skanky. And I don't dislike it. I still love this fragrance. But this one, the leather is so soft and just, there's just a hint of it, you know, it's there, you can tell that it's there, but it's not punching out everything. It's not competing with that iris note. It's not competing with the spices. It's just complementing them, and it's just balanced so beautifully. And it's not a dark leather note either. It's very, I feel like if I was to impart a color to it, I would give it sort of a light brown, almost beige colored leather. That's the image that I get in my mind when I smell the leather note in this fragrance. There is sort of a sweetness to it as well in the deep dry down, but it's not, I wouldn't call it a sweet fragrance. There's still, I mean, that lavender is still there the whole way through. I'm still getting the lavender, but there is just a, I don't know, just a hint of sweetness there. It sort of gets darker as it dries down as well. So not that I would ever classify it as a dark fragrance. And certainly, you know, this fragrance, the Parfum, smells kind of how the bottle looks. You know, it is darker, it is deeper, it is, you know, it's moodier. Whereas this is much lighter. And, but there is a darkness. It does darken as it gets down, but I would never say that it's a dark fragrance. I would say that, you know, the sun's gone behind the clouds a little bit or something. So there is also patchouli and vetiver in this, and I think they are definitely noticeable for me in the dry down because they keep it dry, and you still get that sort of green note. And I think the patchouli helps to give it that bit of a darker tinge. Certainly it's not as bright as it was in the opening. And then after a few hours, I find that I mostly get, well, I think I still get all of it, but it just softens down so beautifully and sort of settles on your skin. For me, the deep dry down is really all about that beautiful soft leather note and the iris and maybe a bit of the vetiver and patchouli with the spices. So really I'm still getting everything, but the leather and the iris are probably the most prominent things if I wasn't to sit here and analyze it and just smell. I think for me what I got the most in the deep dry down was the iris and the leather. This is a really beautiful fragrance. It is, I think, wonderfully balanced between the spices, the citrus, the florals, and the leather notes and amber. I didn't mention the amber, but I think the amber is what gives it the sweetness in the dry down. But I just find that they're just so beautifully blended in this fragrance that you never feel like one note is competing with the other. It's like they're all working harmoniously to just produce something that's bigger than themselves. Hello, puppy. I think if I was to impart a gender to this fragrance, I would have to say it definitely leans more masculine. I think I love it and I would happily wear it, but I think I'd prefer to smell it on somebody else, and preferably a man. And I think also that's the beauty of that cardamom and that pepperiness in the mid with when the iris is really, you know, coming out quite strongly, is that it keeps it in the masculine sort of zone or unisex zone rather than letting it go too florally and too smooth and too soft, which would, you know, arguably make it, I guess, more feminine. Longevity wise, I found this to be a really great performer. I could smell it really easily all the way into the evening, even though I'd sprayed it on in the morning. It does take you on a bit of a journey. It's not, I wouldn't call it linear by any means, although once you get past that mid and that leather starts to come through, I think it does sort of stay fairly the same on my skin for the next few hours after that. But certainly those first few hours are quite interesting. There's a bit of a change in the fragrance and that are clearly detectable. That's kind of irrelevant for this review because it is discontinued or it is very hard to get, so it's unlikely that people are necessarily going to be coming across these on a regular basis. As I said, I don't think it's one that I would necessarily pull for myself, for me, but I would love to smell this on other people around me. This is just an absolutely stunning, stunning fragrance. Overall, I'm very happy to have had the chance to experience this beauty. Can I call it a beauty if I think it's masculine? I can't call it a handsome. I just think it's absolutely stunning. If you aren't a fan of iris notes though, then you're probably not going to like this. The iris is very prominent, even when you just smell it out of the bottle. And it does still have quite a similarity to the Parfum and the Dior Intense. I think it's actually, it feels more closely related to the Dior Homme Intense, even though that doesn't have the leather note and this one does. But the leather note in here is so soft. I feel like you really get a lot of those other elements that get overpowered in the Parfum, and therefore I sort of feel like it's more closely related to the Dior Homme Intense. I think that's really all I have to say about it. I think it's absolutely stunning. It's a shame that it's been discontinued or reformulated, or I don't really know. I get confused of what happens to the journey of all these Dior fragrances because it's all very confusing and they get renamed and who knows what. But suffice to say, this one is very hard to find. And I'm happy to have been able to try it and to experience it. And I will be packing it up very safely and handing it back to its rightful owner very soon. So yeah, that's it from me. Have a lovely rest of your weekend, everybody. I hope you also have a very productive week. Please stay safe if you are in an area that is currently still struggling with the pandemic, and wear a mask. Bye.